It's not all about Israel, it's about the West now. It's about our civilization. That's the fight that's going on. These are people that habitually lie, they hate Jews, they're usually people of very little honor or character. And I go after them. This is a different neighborhood and only the tough survive. And Gilad died. He was killed. A hero. He obviously knew the risks. Without flinching, do what had to be done to save lives.
It sounds extreme, but holy. These are holy soldiers who are fighting on behalf of Western civilization. I'm Hanala, and this is the weekly squeeze breakdown on Moral Edge. Before I introduce my guest, I want to share something with you. Last month, 4 Israeli soldiers were killed in a clash with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. One of them, Staff Sergeant Gilad Harel, 21 years old, had arranged, before entering combat, for flowers to be delivered to his girlfriend. The note said Happy Passover and that he loved her. The bouquet arrived at her door hours before his funeral. I'm starting here because that's what the world we're actually living in looks like. Not the world of talking points and social media threads. The world where a 21-year-old thinks to send flowers before he goes into a firefight. And his girlfriend reads the note thinking it's a condolence arrangement. That gap between what's actually happening on the ground here in Israel and what the rest of the world thinks is happening is exactly what my guest has spent the last 2 decades trying to close. David Lange grew up in Perth, Australia, in a Jewish community of about 7,000 people. He studied law, worked in oil and gas, made aliyah in 2000, built a career in high tech, and somewhere in middle of all of that, started a blog called IsraelCool. Initially as a side project, now as a full-time operation that has become one of the most widely read English language Israel advocacy platforms in the world. He went independent in 2019 and hasn't looked back. What David does is not PR. It's not Hasbara in the soft, careful, please don't offend anyone sense of the word. It's more like real-time forensics. Someone posts a fabricated image, David finds the original. A journalist misquotes a source, David has the receipts. A narrative gets built on a foundation of nothing. David tears the foundation out from under it, in public, with documentation, and without apologizing. He's been threatened, he's been targeted. He's also lost his wife, Ahava, and kept going. That tells you something about the person. David, welcome to Moral Edge.
Thank you for having me, Hannah.
It's really a pleasure. I know you for a long time. I didn't say in the intro, but you have the longest running blog in Israel Hasbara. Is it not the longest?
I think so, but if someone comes out of the woodwork and lays claim to that, I don't want to lose all my credibility. I believe it is.
You started that in the Jurassic period of the internet,
right,
okay?
Yeah, that's how old I am.
So what were you seeing that made you think this needs to happen? It's time for me to step in.
Actually, it didn't happen that way at all. I'm sorry. So I'm going to give a very boring answer.
Give us the boring answer.
I stepped into this whole thing almost accidentally. In 2003, it was March 2003, I heard of something called blogs. This is before Facebook. This is before social media. There was nothing about social media in those days. And I thought, oh, wow, it just sounds like a journal. In fact, what came to my mind, I've never been much of a Trekkie, but I know enough about Captain's Log. So blog, to me, just sort of had that connotation of like Captain's Log. And, you know, living in Israel, I'd made aliyah in 2000, in November 2000, right at the crescendo of the Second Intifada, what's been known as the Second Intifada. And I wanted a bit of a cathartic experience, I guess, to get things off my chest a bit. Now, my first blog entry, it's still on there, by the way. If the audience wants to have a look at IsraelCool.com, go back to March 2003. My first ever blog entry was about a cricketer or the Australian cricket team. Cricket is baseball's sexier cousin, much better cousin. And I slowly started writing posts which you could deem to be more political, but there was no sort of method to my madness. It was just sort of getting stuff off. It was a bit of a dump. What people, a thought dump, what people now use social media for. So it was the precursor to social media. One day I wrote about the assassination or the liquidation of a Hamas terrorist called Dr. Rantizi. Dr. Rantizi. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about that. I don't exactly remember what I wrote about, but then what I saw was that someone with a blog in Australia wrote something linking back to my post. Now, we take that for granted now, right? That someone will share a post of yours on social media or wherever it is.
Look, I matter. People are reading
But back then, what you have to understand is if I got 10 visitors a day, and not including my parents and my family, and I'm being deadly serious.
I know, I've been there.
It was like very exciting if I got to double figures. That's just the way it was back then.
No, blogging was the internet.
Yeah, and here it was like maybe 50 visitors. I don't even remember, but it was like, wow, you have to put it all into perspective. And it was at that point that the penny dropped. Nafal Asimon, that, wait a minute, if I can reach people across the world without even really trying, it's not like I was pumping it out, wanting someone to pick it up. I didn't even think about it. Maybe I can use this for good. With great power comes great responsibility, a great man once said. So that's when I started thinking more strategically about how to use it. And, we've had a lot of wars and a lot of operations, a military operation since then. And,
now you're a big part of our Hasbara community.
Yada, 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 I am. But what I was going to say is even before Twitter with all, I was one of the first to do what's called a live blog. Now you see the Times of Israel, now you see the Jerusalem Post. You see actual mainstream news organizations with these live blogging formats.
I want to talk about how much things have changed since then. Okay, so let's go back, let's say 2 years. So you're blogging. I'm living here almost 10 years. Until October 7th, I thought, okay, Israel is not the safest. There's always say Israel is the safest place in the world, but it's not the calmest place in the world, but manageable. Then October 7th comes. I start getting involved in Hasbara. I mean, you understood the conversation up until then. When then we had a window of compassion and, the world kind of saw what happened here, 48 hours, a week max.
Small window.
And then things went back to the way they were. What has shifted in the last 2 years? Take us through a real quick of Hasbara since October 7th, where we're holding now, how far we've gotten.
Okay. So first of all, in sheer numbers, okay, there's more people now involved in IsraelCool. You just mentioned a bit about your personal story, but you're not alone, let's say. There have been many what people call October the 7th activists. I don't really like saying that because there's a bit of a negative connotation sometimes with that, as if you just sort of pulled on your big boy socks or big girl socks afterwards.
I was always doing advocacy, but October 7th they opened up an Israel
But I think it really did sort of, trigger a lot of people to say, listen, I've got to do more, I've got to use my, whatever that sphere of influence is. Okay, not in everyone's sphere of influence can be very different, right? So not everyone has a huge platform, but maybe within certain communities you have a bit of influence. I don't know, in the knitting circle, maybe someone has, or in the baseball.
Sure.
So I think people sort of understood that even if they were being apolitical in terms of an online presence, that it was now time to sort of step up, because what they were seeing were people that they were considered to be colleagues, friends, acquaintances, were now saying the most horrendous things. Even after this most unimaginable atrocity, the worst to happen to the Jewish people since the Holocaust, had occurred to us. So it was more just being sort of shaken into action. And there have been so many people that have done that. Now, that's obviously a good thing. I think it from a personal point of view, all these people at least feel they're doing something. I can speak from experience. Feeling like helplessness is one of the worst feelings in the world, whether it's in Hasbara, whether it's in my personal life with things going on. It's just a horrible feeling. And you want to just feel, even if you're doing it for yourself, you want to feel like you're doing it. But of course, objectively speaking, a lot of people have made a difference and can have a very large impact. So, but of course, and maybe we'll get into it a bit later, I think it's almost sometimes like, and I don't mean to put down anyone that's doing this, but it's like sometimes operating heavy machinery, meaning you need to know how to do it, because if you make a lot of mistakes, the stakes can be very high. If you put out, for instance, misinformation like a lot of people do, they don't do their fact checking, they're just, blurting out stuff, especially when the other side do it deliberately, and people like me, but not just me, as you put in the introduction, your kind introduction, rebut and, rebut these libels and these inaccuracies, it sort of can bite us on the finger.
Yeah, a friend of mine, I actually saw her content on the Al-Quds Telegram group. I see my friend here walking around in Israel. They took a clip from her from 2 years ago that she posted on Instagram where she's giving a little tour of her city. And lo and behold, there's military tanks in the school. Now, mind you, our enemies always use the same argument that we use. They just switch it on us. So we know the facts. The fact is there's a war. We use our schools were closed. We use our schools we don't use them as bases, but we don't use our innocent people as human shields like our enemies do. So yeah, you have to be extremely careful. It's things will go viral in a second. But you get into the woods. You get into the nitty gritty. You take on big names. You take on podcast hosts. You're fearless in a sense. I mean, that could get pretty ugly. How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's definitely.
I mean, after October 7th, all the emotions. I mean, especially because you're doing all this advocacy. Then October 7th happens. Then you realize, did I even make a difference? Look at the animosity, right? Yeah. So emotionally, how did you? What keeps you fighting and taking all the heat? Yeah, because you're like famous on X.
Okay.
Famous enough.
Or infamous. So listen, I have been doing this for so long that I know what my objectives are and what my target audience is. So I don't fall into the trap that many fall into getting into these online arguments and thinking I'm going to change the mind of this anti-Semite. It very rarely happens. Although not all anti-Semites are equal, and that's something we can discuss a bit later as well. That's a whole discussion in itself. Because not everyone that comes out with something anti-Semitic is necessarily,
right, they're misinformed, they're influenced.
Yeah, exactly. Or they don't even realize that it's a trope, right? But I'm talking now about the people who are unapologetically anti-Semitic, or that they're anti-Semitic. Yeah, exactly. Your friend, Candace Owens. Yes.
Tucker.
Yes, Tucker as well. So they're not the people I'm trying to convince. Okay, when I expose these people, and I do it in a certain way as well, I don't what we call play it with a straight bat, which is, taking it seriously in the sense of when I do my writing, I do it in an angry kind of serious way. I try to inject a lot of humor and mock and ridicule them because these people have huge egos for the most part, right? So if you do it in a sort of a serious way, a lot of times, like Candace, no, they'll even use it as sort of like a badge of honor, right? She's kind of happy that she's getting all this attention from the Jewish community. But if you mock her like this account that looks at all the mispronunciations, that's brilliant.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah.
So that's kind of like my philosophy, that you want to mock.
Their high horse.
Right? And get them off their high horse and you mock and ridicule them. And believe me, there's always something you can mock and ridicule about them because they're very, I don't know if I can swear, but let's say they're not very nice people. That wasn't the word I was going to use, but not very nice people. So there's always some dirt you can dig on them. And
also it's based on lies and crap. Yeah. I mean, half this stuff is just made up.
But here's the thing. So another thing in, going after, what that means is being proactive. So I don't just believe in rebutting a libel when it comes our way, but really you look at who is perpetuating that libel, disseminating it, and they're usually people of very little honor or character. And I go after them, and I'll go after them and say, this isn't their first rodeo or rodeo. These are people that habitually lie, or they've blah blah blah. They do this, they do that. They hate Jews. They've got anti-Semitism.
Big X accounts that are
not just X accounts. I mean, real life people, people in politics, doctors. A professor at Rutgers, I kind of took down once. He still ended up with his job, but he had limited powers or less powers than he used to. So that's the key. I think, offense is the best defense. So you don't want to be defensive, but at the same time, you do have to bat back accusations and libels. You do have to be factual, but you have to appeal to people's emotions.
Right. And we have to get into the mud, unfortunately. It's not
and you get into the mud.
But this is where they are.
Yeah, not everyone. So getting back to your question, when October the 7th came, it didn't sort of change my approach much.
No, you weren't.
Part of me wasn't completely surprised, believe it or not.
It was
I thought maybe we'd get a little bit, I thought we'd get maybe a little bit more leeway than the few days or a week, maybe a month.
And the college protests were pretty.
But I've been following this for a long time. I've been seeing the pernicious nature of anti-Semitism on the left. I even wrote a blog post maybe a decade ago, maybe less, that said that the anti-Semitism of the left is way worse than the anti-Semitism of the right.
Well, it's the horseshoe theory. And some will argue that it's equal on both sides.
No, but what I mean by that is, and it's coming to fruition, it's not that it's worse in the sense that, it's all bad, right? But it's more dangerous because it's been couched in human rights language. So appealing to people's emotions, these are people that try to look like the good people, that they're the ones that care about human rights.
Like Francisca Albanese,
and
running her mouth all over the internet.
Yes. And that's dangerous in the sense that you might influence, again, my target audience are the people in the middle. Not these diehard anti-Semites. And they're the people, and by the way, they're like a silent majority in the world. Social media isn't real life. And people have to always...
Really?
Yeah, no, I'm saying that too, right? I'm on social media a lot. It's not real life. I've learned that the majority of people either don't care, It's not. They don't think it's their fight, or
they made up their mind already, and they don't really.
No, but or they're even pro-Israel. Right. I'm saying
that's
the majority
of people.
They're
already like they.
But
they know
what we need to do better is show how it's their fight. Meaning, it's not all about Israel. It's about the West now. It's about our civilization. That's the fight that's going on.
Sure.
And it's not, as I used to think, about, Islam versus the Jews, okay? There are different components to what it is. It's really about the West versus those who hate the West, and that includes fundamentalist Muslims, not all Muslims, and it includes the woke left.
And the far-right MAGA.
Because they've bought into this, this neo-Marxist philosophy that has been, fed into the education system for decades. So that's what this fight's about.
But even now we see with the Iran war how hypocritical. I mean, they've been exposed as, we know now that money was put in, they were paid to demonstrate. So a big bulk of them are just sheep, ultimately. So you really want to target the people who are influencing the sheep. And that's really what your focus is, because you can't reach everyone. Like you're saying, they're not always on X. They don't always hear. Many people don't know who you are, who I am. So the question becomes, why do we keep doing it? Why do we keep doing it? Because you're saying it slowly tips the needle.
It's like, the parable of the water. I forget which Rav said it. You probably know better than I would. That the water dripping on the rock.
Right, with Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva, right? So it just
slowly, right.
And you have to have patience. And you know what? Anti-Semitism, you could argue, and I actually do believe this. Everything comes from God, right? So anti-Semitism comes from God. So you could be a defeater and say, listen, if it's His will, it's a way to keep us together. I believe it's a way to keep the Jewish people together.
So does cancer come from God? Doesn't mean we don't fight it.
Exactly. We need to fight it, and by fighting it, we also refine ourselves as people, right? We band together like we're seeing now. There were a lot of divisions before October the 7th. A lot of people forget that. Some of them are creeping back in now.
Sure.
But I think we were on the brink of civil war before October the 7th. I really do believe that. With all these
my
protests.
brother-in-law was the chazan in Tel Aviv at that infamous minyan where they disturbed. And I remember hearing about that and just having I was so disenchanted almost. Like if anywhere we're supposed to be able to pray in publicly and accept one another and live in peace. And I'm not a big demonstration girl. They make me very uncomfortable. But yes, that's where we were at. I don't think we're definitely not there now. We're
not there now.
We're not there now. We've come a long way.
So we just have to get to realize that more. And again, I'm not saying anti-Semitism is a good thing. But if there are any positives to come out of October the 7th, even saying that sentence seems a bit wrong. But, unity, or the unity that we've had for fleeting moments across the journey,
and also
we have to latch on to that.
We learn. Like, for example, what happened in Lebanon with the soldier who took down the crucifix. Sure, that went viral, very hard to defend, but we apologized. We replaced the statue. We put out a statement. Those are the things that we have to put into place so that when, things backfire or there's misinformation or things happen that make us not look good, we're quick to address it and challenge those who put us in that light.
But that whole thing, by the way, let me just quickly address that.
Sure.
So it really cheeses me off. Obviously, the
Explain
incident
to our
itself.
audience exactly what happened. So this was just recently in Lebanon. This went completely viral. It's so frustrating because so many good things we do don't go viral. No one pays attention.
But a lot of soldiers do stupid things. Or some soldiers, I don't know the numbers, but you see a lot on social media and they're doing stuff and it's always going to be misconstrued. There's nothing misconstrued about this, okay? It's a soldier, decapitating a statue of Jesus. Okay, now we've got a very long history of being allies with the Christians in Lebanon, right? Mm-hmm. We had allies during, the 82, the war.
And Christians
some came to live in Israel.
Sure.
And, we made a lot of mistakes along the way. The thing that there's nothing to defend about this. It's completely wrong. It's completely not according to our ethics as a Jewish state in terms of the Torah, in terms of looking after the minorities, okay? And it was just a really dumb thing that one or a few, because obviously there's the cameraman, there were a few of them, right? Mm. But the thing that cheeses me off besides the act itself is the reaction, the disproportionate reaction, which shows the it pretends to anti-Semitism. What do I mean? First of all, I'm not a person that screams out anti-Semitism every time someone criticizes Israel. But is there any other people or nation that you have a little group of people that are condemned by like the vast majority of everyone else in that nation, but the whole nation is called evil or anti-Christian and that's the point. And this is happening.
It's racist.
It's happening.
It's racist.
This is getting lost to a lot of people, regular people out there, because they'll see something like this and they almost buy into the narrative that all of Israel's are rotten.
Well, you can argue. Our friend Uri argues that he doesn't like that we call Israel that the IDF is the most moral army in the world because it puts us too high on a pedestal. Why should we?
I don't know. That doesn't bother me, and I think we are probably the most moral. I have no problem bragging about that.
Even if we had no rules.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what we say, right? Because, and that's the thing, we have to stop apologizing for these things. Of course, in terms of this statue desecration, of course, to apologize for that, apologize, condemn it,
sure,
because we didn't do it. Some idiot soldiers did it, right? Some young,
on his own. That wasn't right.
People have to realize they're very young, and the vast majority. And we'll talk about Gilad hopefully a bit later. The most amazing young people on the planet. The most amazing. There's such a generation of heroes. Unbelievable. So yeah, there's some that haven't really grown up yet, and they want their clicks.
And also, again, we need to focus on the positive stories. That's the issue. I posted a video today on my Instagram of an Arab soldier who grew up hating Israel. And then he learned to love Israel and he joined the army and now he's being celebrated and he's a commander or whatever it is. Stories like that. That's
important as well.
But those happen every day. Stories like this, once in a blue moon. And, listen, we're in the middle of a war. They say all is fair in love and war. And the way we're scrutinized on this giant magnifying glass, when in fact, like you say, our soldiers are, it sounds extreme, but holy. These are holy soldiers who are fighting on behalf of Western civilization. The people in America don't understand. The people abroad don't understand the sacrifices that we make for you. For you. You know what? We're thick-skinned here. We can deal with it. We can deal with the heat. We can deal with the dust. We can deal with the chaos. But we're hearing the message. The way Iran calls America the big great Satan and Israel's the little Satan. America's far away. We're dealing with this here, right here. And that's why it's so frustrating. Well, just to highlight the double standard here, let's take this war for example, okay? So we've seen so many scenes. Now, I'll preface by saying I don't believe that all Gazans are bad. I don't think all Gazans are for Hamas, but it's a fact. And we saw that there were a lot of Gazans too many, right? That were committing atrocities on October the 7th. And they were offered millions of dollars to show where our hostage were.
No one took any bounties. No one pointed to any hostages. They were very, a lot were implicated. And then we saw the ceremonies when hostages were released and it was like a concert. Yeah. Horrific. So what my point is this, not to implicate all Gazans, God forbid, but to say this. Look at the world reaction, or when I say the world, many loudmouths in the world, okay, or online especially, that are pointing the finger saying Israel's so bad and look what they did to the statue. It's a statue, but still very bad act of maximum three soldiers, right? The soldier that did it, maybe some cameraman and maybe an onlooker. I don't know. A handful. To at least hundreds, let's be honest, let's just say conservative estimate, at least hundreds of Gazans of the millions in the strip are pro-Hamas or somehow helped hide hostages, were somehow colluding with Hamas. At least, and by the way, I'm lowballing it, right?
You're being generous.
But the minute that anyone would say anything even like what I'm saying now, right? Oh, look, you can't, collective punishment. How can you paint everyone with the same brush? Gazans are not Hamas, but a few soldiers are Israel. Do you know what I mean? So there's a double standard.
Yeah, huge
So I just want to point that out for the people at home.
Absolutely. And also we see videos of Iran, the university students stepping over American flags, stepping over Israeli flags.
But there's so many Iranians who are pro-Israel and pro-American.
Even in Turkey, Turkey's part of NATO. There was a presentation they had a presentation. They had children ripping up pictures of Trump and Bibi. And that doesn't go viral. And that's so horrifically offensive. These are children. These are not soldiers that have been through 2 years of war that might be resentful that they have to enlist for the 10th time or that they've lost their comrades or that they're fighting once again in Lebanon after all these years, the same fight that their father and grandfather fought. So there's so much to unpack when these things happen. But again, it just gets, thrown across the internet. Israel bad, everyone else good.
And
Hamas
it's always Israel's fault as well. Some things that don't even occur in Israel or have nothing to do with us, these people are always bringing it back to Israel. Charlie Kirk, you name it. Yeah. You name it. It's always somehow our fault. And even if someone is involved who's not Jewish, but they have a slightly Jewish name, they're Jewish all of a sudden. Even if they don't have a Jewish name, they're Jewish. So, or if they marry the Jew. So there's always, it's ridiculous.
But let me ask you, let's get personal. Because that's what this podcast is about. We're interviewing and speaking to the movers and shakers here in Israel who make a difference, who matter, who commit, and who, I'm living here for 9 years. I wouldn't say that I sacrifice anything tremendous yet. I've been through a lot. I don't have a lot of family here, almost none. My sister made aliyah, so I'm alone here in this country, you can say. That's challenging. I'm recently divorced, also challenging, bureaucracy, all that stuff. But you've lost here. You've buried your wife. You've buried your stepson recently. Does it ever come to a point, and I want you to tell me a little bit about these experiences so people could just relate to you, who you are and what motivates you. Do you ever get to a point where you're just like, oh God, this is too much? Or this is what it is. This is your calling. Got to keep moving.
Okay, so in terms of, is this too much? If we're talking about life, definitely not. Okay, life's a blessing.
I thought you were going to say, definitely, I'm over it.
No, and I'm a person of faith, and I believe that, as I said before, God runs the world, and He doesn't always answer our prayers the way we want, but I still believe it's for the greater good, and we don't necessarily have the big picture. This life is just a corridor to the immortal life, I believe. And so that gives me a lot of comfort. And it's still very hard, of course, losing a wife to cancer. It was a slow burn, 7 years.
Yeah, I read her story in the layered book.
Yeah, she was quite, she would have been a great interview subject.
I read her book. I was very inspired by her. She was
very inspiring, yeah.
And also there's a library in our neighborhood.
Yes.
I've benefited, and I think I moved in shortly after she passed away. I've benefited from her existence, just from the great things that were established after her passing. And then take us back to, it's only, Erev Pesach?
Oh, so with Gilad.
Yeah,
okay.
Take us back. So you remarried?
I remarried in August 2023.
You have grown children?
This pre-October the 7th, and I've got 5 of my own children. And my wife, Karen, she has 2 children, Gilad being one of them, and Adi. On October the 7th, so I'll go back a little bit first. On October the 7th, Adi's boyfriend, Yonatan Savitsky, who was in the Egoz unit, he died, and he died a hero. He wasn't at the Nova Festival, but he was, as I said, in the Egoz unit, and he was called to save some chayalim or chayalot, soldiers, female soldiers, that were trapped in the base and surrounded by terrorists.
He was 19 at the time.
He was about 19 at the time, I believe. And so, sorry, I think he was 21.
Oh, how old was he when he passed?
I think he was 21 when he passed.
Okay, so this was 2 years ago, October 7th.
It was October 2.5 years ago, yeah.
So you're talking about?
Now, no, so I'm not talking about Gilad. So I'm telling you that the journey starts before Gilad.
Okay.
And what's happened to our family, because Adi, my stepdaughter, her boyfriend was killed on October the 7th, but he was killed as a hero. They got out the soldiers, and they thought they had all the terrorists liquidated, but there was some, I guess, still on the roof. So they popped off some of our soldiers, and Yonatan was one of them. And I'm mentioning this not just to give you an idea of what our family's gone through, but there are going to be parallels with Gilad, because Gilad also died a complete hero. So, wow, this is the first time I've actually spoken about this. I was thinking,
we were on the Intel group, and when the news was shared, you're our brother, you're our friend, your family. The devastation. Just between us, because I know every loss is personal, but this, it feels extra personal. It just feels like it's happening to each of us, and it doesn't stop. And here we are trying everything we can, and then God tests us in this way.
Yeah.
Take us through that day.
So, oh wow, okay, it's a blur, and I'm gonna just try not to get too emotional. Because as I said, this is the first time I'm talking about this publicly.
I think it's really important for our audience to hear. I don't think people internalize it enough, and this is something that this is our experience.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get a bit personal here as well. October the 7th had a devastating effect on all of us on a personal level. Besides, wading through the muck every day and, having all the PTSD that everyone has.
And the footage and internalizing what had happened.
Yeah, so and I'm just, exposed to all these things. So Yonatan's death, it set off a chain of events basically where, we were all living together, like a Brady Bunch situation. And it created a situation where it was just too hard for my stepdaughter to come to that house anymore, which we completely understand. And all the kids are very close. And, I don't want to say my kids and Karen's kids, we say the kids, right? We don't kind of delineate it like that. But it was just hard for her to mourn and to recover. So she was coming less and less to the house. So, after a year, we We have separate houses now. Okay, this is being very personal.
I'm a big fan of separate houses.
Yeah, no, but great marriage and everyone gets along well.
Yeah,
so
no judgment.
we got to count our blessings. But
Amazing.
we just had to focus
What's best for the kids.
on healing. Everyone healing in their own way with the kids. Yeah. Why am I saying this? Because on the day that so he was killed on, I think it was 6:30 p.m. So
did you know he was in Lebanon?
Yeah, we knew he was in Lebanon, but you just don't think about the dangers too much. I mean, at least me. And so I get a phone call. Now, I happened to be at home that night for whatever reason, in the house that I'm normally residing in. So I got a phone call from my wife. That's why I kind of had a preamble. People were like, what do you mean you got a phone call from your wife? Didn't she just do that? Okay. And she's like, you got to come over now. Something's happened to Gilad. It was like 2 a.m. or 1:30 in the morning. And I'm like, well, what? I quickly just get ready and I'm rushing over there and I'm like, my mind's just racing. Like something happened to him. Like, oh no, like I didn't necessarily jump to
the worst case scenario.
The worst case scenario. I'm like, oh, maybe he got injured or, it was just like, quick, you got to come over now. And so I'm on my way there and, it's like a 7-minute drive. And then I get into the parking lot and I see those uniformed officers, the ones that knock on the door, and they're outside. And just my heart sank because I know what that means.
Your first.
And then I just saw Gary and I'm like, what happened? And my wife's crying, like, Gilad's gone. And we're sitting there and
they tell you what happened?
Well, at that point, the details weren't, we didn't have all the details. It was sort of vague. Details came out later and I can go into what I know at least. But, and Adi, so my stepdaughter, happened to be on her post-army trip. She was in South America. And they were trying to locate her to obviously come back for the funeral. And that's the thing people might not realize, when they announce soldiers' deaths. So I think that announced 3 of them and the funerals, and they were the ones that were published. And Gilad's was published like a day later. That's because we were stalling it. We wanted to make sure that family members
you have to be careful not to share these things.
Yeah, exactly. So people have to be very sensitive if they hear something on social media or whatever, but it hasn't been broadcast. This is why you need to be very careful because, God forbid, like for instance, Karen's father is very elderly. We had to find a way to tell him he's quite frail. And, that his grandson is, he's outlived his grandson. That's very painful. And he watches the news all the time. So imagine if that leaked and he found out from the news. I mean, God forbid something could happen. So just, that's words for the wise.
Wow, so many people are impacted.
Yeah. And then, so I went back home, got my kids, and my kids, as I said, are so close to Gilad. My son and Gilad were like best friends. They were training together. My son's also in the army. I won't say where, but he's also in the army, and they were training together before the army, and there were a lot of parallels, and they were egging each other on.
IDF soldiers are brothers regardless.
Yeah, no, but this is like real brothers,
sure.
like step brothers, but also kind of like blood brothers. So my kids, I said I wouldn't say that, but my kids, my blood kids, also devastated. And they lost their mother, 7 or so years ago, and this is another. And then Yonatan, who they'd met, and seeing how devastated Adi was, we were all devastated. Now this had to happen. It was everything was a blur.
What do you say to these kids?
Well, they're older. Do
you have to say something? Do you have a conversation?
Well, my kids are older, so my youngest is 16, my oldest is like 24.
I just mean after, like...
No, they're adults. My kids are adults. If they were younger, it's
You think they know this
harder.
is the cost? They know this is the cost? There's no, like, how could they do this to us? Why do we live here? How could God...
Well, here's the thing. My kids grew up in Israel, okay? So they're actually Israeli, and they don't have a, I don't want to say diaspora mentality in a insulting way, but sometimes, people that are born in Israel can say, oh, you're from the diaspora. I don't mean it that way, but there's a different mentality. It's a really different mentality. By the way, the kids here, and this is what I mentioned before about this foolish soldier in Lebanon with the statue, but the vast majority, they're like the best. They're the best. They say we're called Nazis, right? Zionists are like the new Nazis. And I joke, and I say this very facetiously. Maybe if they heard me, they would think I'm a bit of a Nazi because I say stuff like, our kids, the Israeli kids, are like the top. And that sounds a little, you could twist that and say, oh, you're saying they're they're the Aryans. You know, I'm being facetious.
Well,
it's nothing to do with their blood or anything like that. It's they're brought up in this environment, this pressure cooker, and you know, they can be very immature before the army, but something like snaps with the vast majority of them. And they, right before the army, it's unbelievable. Like, so, you know, Gilad was in an elite unit. My son's in an elite unit. They all wanted to be in elite units. And all their friend group, and it doesn't matter, you know, the socio-economic background of these kids, what school they went to, the family, if they're religious or not religious, they all want to get into elite units. They all want to serve the best. I think back when I was in Australia, if I had to do the army back when I was their age, I probably would have wanted to be the cook in the kitchen. Do you know what I mean? And I'm sure there are a lot of diaspora
no one's shirking their duties. No one's trying to get away
it's
with
the opposite.
right.
And they are brave. And Gilad died. He was killed, a hero. So there is a little bit of comfort from that, not much, but I can tell you a bit about what I know about how he died. It's the bravery is unbelievable, and he's not alone.
Can you describe what I want people what
this
it's
is
like?
what I know, right? This is what I know. So I don't have all the details, and you know, maybe my subconscious makes me forget things. I tend to be very forgetful these days. So he was in a village called Beit Lif, which is like Beit Life, which my wife pointed out, wow, look at that. It's either his life was taken, or you could look at it another way, that the soldiers are there trying to save lives of innocent people, you know, trying to take out terrorists. Now, there were terrorists. They knew that there were a certain number of terrorists in that village of Beit Lif, and they're going, I think, house to house. And one of their soldiers, I think his name was Ben Cohen, he was shot. And the fire came from the front. So they're moving forward, and fire came from, he was ahead of them, and he was shot. So they know that there are terrorists in front. Now, from what I understand, without any order from any commanding officer, Gilad and the others are just like, we've got to get our comrade, our colleague, our friend, our brother, and we've got to get him without thinking twice.
No hesitation.
Even though they know they're terrorists somewhere, but they think the terrorists are in front of them. Unfortunately, they were surrounded. They're in a village, right?
They're Hezbollah terrorists, very
Hezbollah
armed,
terrorists,
Iran
and
proxies.
they were picked off, but like running to save their brother. Now, this is what I've been told secondhand, but someone that found his body, they found Gilad's body, they said that he had a little bit of a grin on his face, like a bit of a smile. So maybe, I'd like to think, maybe it's just me and us trying to find a bit more comfort, or maybe just knowing Gilad, you know, maybe in that moment he knew, yes. And by the way, you mentioned in the preface how he left flowers. This was just him. I do want to talk a bit about Gilad, what he was like as well. But you can get a lot about him from this story, you know, with the flowers. But he also, my wife and her ex-husband, and Nadir, of course, just got back his phone. And before they got back the phone, Karen says to me and to other people, oh, he's definitely left a note for us. Because he was so considerate, like with the flowers, right?
Okay.
And sure enough, and she knew exactly where the note would be, because it'd be in the notepad part of the iPhone, right? Because he was a logical thinker, very smart kid, and obviously the mother knows, parents know the child, how the child would think. And sure enough, he left notes.
To be read after.
And, you know, I don't know the contents, of course, that's between them. But just to be that, you know, he knew that he didn't necessarily know he was going to die, right? But he obviously knew the risks.
Yeah, right.
And without flinching, do what had to be done to save lives.
How was the funeral?
So apparently, I was there, but you don't see how, you know, you're sort of, I was right close, even close. But apparently there were so many people there. There were thousands. This was during the time of the Iran war, where there was a limit of maybe 150.
And it's been a while since soldiers we've lost soldiers.
Yeah.
I mean, not that we ever can get used to it.
Yeah.
But this was like another shock.
It was another shock, yeah. But there were the limits on the number of attendees, but they didn't stop anyone. And there were people were saying to me afterwards, we had to like hike from they couldn't get into the cemetery with their car. So they hiked 3 kilometers away, or they, you know, hitchhiked.
So personal for each and every one of us.
So, but, you know, I didn't know this at the time because everything was a blur and I'm focused on what's going on around me, but it was packed. You know, we stand together during these tough times. So although this is devastating, what I guess I'm trying to say is that, in going back to your original question, If I ever think of hanging up my boots in any way, shape or form, whether it's being in life or in Israel or Hasbara, no. I mean, because at the end of the day, there's so much to fight for. These are beautiful people, the bravest, the best. And again, I'm not talking like, the anti-Semites will say Jewish supremacy. It's got nothing to do with that. I'm talking about the values that have been inculcated into them. They're not better by virtue of their birthright. No, that's not what chosen people means. You know that. I'm talking to the audience now.
It's a responsibility.
It's a responsibility, and we're fighting in terms of morals, but in terms of we're also, the responsibility that we are facing right now is fighting for the survival of the West Judeo-Christian values. I could put in Muslim, moderate Muslim values too, the ones that believe in God without all the bloodshed. So I've got friends like that. But you know what I'm saying, godly values of what's right and what's wrong, of freedom, democracy, of treating your fellow man the way that we would like to be treated.
How's your family?
It's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard. So it's hard. It's a day-by-day proposition. It's been very hard. The quiet times are the worst, I think. So we had the Jewish Shiva, this 7-day period. We didn't have that officially. This happened right before Pesach. So in Jewish law, when someone is buried before a Chag, a festival, the Shiva, the 7 days, is extinguished.
Right.
But in their wisdom, Gilad's parents, Karen and her ex, and Gilad's father, decided to have the open house aspect of the Shiva. So not with all the prohibitions, but they had an open house. And it's really cathartic because you're in one hand, it's really hard because you don't feel like talking. You want to just crawl under a blanket and not talk to anyone. But that's the beauty of it, and that's the wisdom of it, because it allows you to face those demons. And by talking with people and hearing more stories about the loved one, there's that cathartic aspect, but also you learn more about the loved one. Karen learned so much about Gilad that she didn't even know about her own son, because in the army there were traits that she, I'll talk a little bit about Gilad. He was very quiet. He wasn't shy, but he was sort of very modest, and he didn't have to brag. But this was an all-star person. Top of the class, so academically brilliant, chatich, very, very handsome, tall, dark and handsome, great at sport. He was a goalkeeper for the city, the municipality. That's the word. You lose English when you live here too long, but that's a hard word.
Area.
Yeah, the area. And, just good at everything, But he wasn't the sort of person that spoke about it. You just he had what's called quiet charisma. Quiet charisma. So, but he was a bit more outgoing in the army, apparently. So, he was like I wouldn't say the life of the party, but he was the guy, the chevra man, the guy that just say you wanted to get a group of guys together. He would be the guy that would put it into place. So Karen didn't necessarily know that he was like that. I mean, he was probably always like that, but as a parent, you don't always see your kid around the friends.
the IDF is a great place. They bring out people's potential and they, tap into what each soldier's their best capabilities. So
by the way, really another thing is, he grew up like a skinny kid, but whenever he put his mind to something, he just accomplished it. So he started weightlifting before the army, and he became like a colossus of a man. And he was the negavist, the guy with the semi-automatic, like this big gun. You give that to the guy in the platoon who's like one of the strongest guys, yeah?
So he was 80 pounds.
He was jacked. He was jacked. I don't know how much it is, but yeah, he was very jacked. And I got a bit of a story also, him and my son, Zach, they, as I said, they were like besties, and it was just so cute seeing them together. And Zach, they'd go on runs together. And Zach, at that time, he was a bit better at the long distance running thing. He had more endurance. Gilad was the stronger, right? He was this guy, but Zach was a bit more nimble, although Zach's pretty big these days himself. And what happened, this is the story that's been told to me, Zach told to me, is that one day, they went running and Zach, got a much better time. And then one day, Gilad sent him, I guess it was a Strava thing, the picture and the time, and he had blitzed Zach's time, by half an hour. And, Zach remembered that. So after Gilad passed away, Zach, he's been pretty quiet. Everyone deals with it on their own. I'm looking, I hope he's okay. He just started doing stuff, wanting to find a lookout place to honor Gilad, maybe get a bench with a plaque. But one day he just left, and I'm where is he? And it turns out he ran the same distance, and he wanted to do it in honor of Gilad, but he also wanted to get to the time that Gilad did, and he almost exactly reached the time that Gilad got to.
Wanted
and
to
he
run
was,
with him.
Yeah, it was like he was running with him. It was a beautiful thing. But, that story shows a lot about their relationship, but also about, again, Gilad, if he put his mind to something, he's like, I'm going to, I want to do better. And, he had a great sense of humor as well, and had the interplay with Zach and his friends. And he's just, my point is, it's not just another soldier. It's obviously a son, a stepson, a friend, a beautiful human.
A Jew.
And, of course, Jew, but this isn't what you see beyond the headlines. And, in fact, we're dehumanized beyond belief. Also by the media.
The IDF is evil. I'm like,
these are young people. They make mistakes like anyone. But you know what? I promise you the percentage of mistakes that are being done by these young people in an army situation are way less than any other army in the world.
What's going on in Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah.
I mean, the sadism between the armies.
But we are held to like a high standard, and that's outright anti-Semitism. And that's where the anti-Semitism comes into it. It's this double standard.
How do you not get affected by the politics of it all? So the politics shape what actually happens, the decisions that are being made. We have Trump in office, things are going in one direction. It's obviously, with the Iran war, the decisions with Hasbara, ceasefire, not ceasefire, when it's that personal, it could get, you can, those things really, where do you hold as far as what's going on with Lebanon at the moment? And then I want to go into a speed round as a Hasbara pro, let's call you. Ask you a couple of things to clarify what Hasbara is and what it isn't.
Yeah. Okay. So to answer that first question, I don't. Are you
happy with Trump?
Yeah, I think Trump does some pretty good stuff. So I'm definitely he's very polarizing. So you have the always Trumpers or the never Trumpers. I'm sort of like treat him just like any other person. I don't have to like him as a person. I don't know him as a person, but I have thoughts on how he acts, and he seems a bit juvenile, and it's not necessarily someone I want to have a beer with, although maybe I would, because he can also be very entertaining. He's not monolithic, okay? He's got different aspects to him. If I evaluate his actions, I think he has probably been the best president at least in modern times for the state of Israel. The only one that might come close is Reagan, but then again, Reagan also, from what I can remember, did some stuff that peeved off Israel at the time as well.
A lot more things happened in the last.
Yeah, so I think Trump has, moving the embassy. I mean, there's been a lot in this war, and he wasn't necessarily doing it for Israel, but he saw it was good for America. So, but he's very unpredictable. So, I wouldn't put all my eggs in the Trump basket, but at the same time, let's be fair. Don't. Just because he's Donald Trump and you don't like him, and I'm saying this to many of my fellow Jews, who vote Democrat, I think a lot of them are being very unfair to Trump. And again, I don't agree with everything he's even doing in this war. I think that sometimes he'll say some things and it looks like our hands are a bit tied. But, he's got his considerations to do.
Right, don't take him literally, take him seriously.
Yeah.
Right. So you gotta learn.
And what you have to bear in mind is he's an amazing negotiator. So a lot of the stuff he says is part of his negotiation tactics. And he puts out stuff that maybe he doesn't intend to follow through just to scare the bejesus out of the Iranian regime. Now what you have to realize
is that it works.
It does work because the Iranian regime are crazy.
Yeah, they're theocratic jihadi.
They are willing to blow up the world in order
to speak their
get
language.
to gun.
You have to speak in Arabic to them. Trump speaks in English, but it's Arabic.
So he's so unpredictable, and he doesn't go by the usual conventions of the West. Like if A, then B, he'll throw in a C or a D or an X.
Keeps them on their toes.
And he keeps them on their
toes.
So people with our Western mindset, you have to always look at things. This is a different neighborhood. This isn't your grandmother's neighborhood. This is a different neighborhood, and only the tough survive.
We don't speak sushi, we speak hummus.
Oh, there's some great sushi though here in Israel too, by the way.
Right.
Yes.
It's a mentality though, and I think Trump has it. And I mean, again, all of this is very personal, right? So, and there's arguments to be made that maybe Israel should be more independent. We shouldn't be so reliant on America. But the fact of the matter is, I saw someone describe that the Israeli-America collaboration against Iran was like an elephant being preceded by a hive of bees. So Israel's like the bees, and we go in and we sting all where we need to sting, and then the elephant comes with their presents. So it is a nice shidduch. It is a nice.
Well, and people have to realize, we say aid and all this, but it's really, as you said, a collaboration.
Yeah.
Even the aid has strings attached, meaning
like
we have to use the money to purchase American technology, and it is a real marriage, and we help. Improve the technology.
This idea that Israel has America by the what.
Yeah, it's neither way. No. They don't have us by the what, and we don't have them. It's real
like a marriage. Everybody gives 100%.
We have our arguments sometimes, which is fine. But, at the end of the day, it's the values, the common values that hold us together. And that's why it's so important that America keeps to those values. And, with all the wokeness going on there, in a few generations, who knows what will be. We see the Democrat Party that is going in a horrible direction at the moment. And even, let's be fair, there's a wing of the woke right, a wing of the Republican Party. So we can't ever take things for granted. At the end of the day, yes, we need to nurture and continue this wonderful collaboration and partnership and friendship. At the same time, there could be a day that we are alone. We can never forget that.
Right.
We always have to be able to stand on our own feet.
We've been alone before.
And we have.
That's what it is.
Yes.
All right. Let's do a fire round.
Okay.
Hasbara. I feel like you're going to handle this really well. Okay, this is an easy one. BBC, propaganda or news?
Come on. Is it really?
Garbage crap.
Garbage crap, yes.
Okay. Al Jazeera, news or state weapon?
State weapon?
State weapon, good. New York Times, fixable or a lost cause?
Well, that's a good one. I'm going to say fixable. I'll tell you why.
They just now, by the way, featured an op-ed by a professor who spoke terribly about Israel, about Lebanon specifically. So their whole staff needs to be replaced.
I think the New York Times is like the pulse, right, in a sense of a certain group of America, right, a certain section of America, kind of an elitist group. If you look at the New York Times, and this is something I've done on my website, going back to the beginning of the 1900s, it was so pro-Israel. Like I always use one of the weapons I use old New York Times articles to show, for instance, they were referring to Jews as Palestinians and the other side as Muslims or Muslims.
It's the most trusted newspaper in the world.
And it was really, it was amazing. I mean, you got to check this stuff out. Anyone that has you can either go to my website or get a subscription and go into the time capsule part and put in search. Look for yourself. Like think for yourself. So,
in our lifetime, it's completely changed.
So you know what? I can never say I'm a bit of an optimist, even though things look pretty bad. So I'll say, you know what? If the silent majority sort of get their act together, then maybe it is fixable. A new owner.
Call them out. I called them out on my news page for featuring anti-Semites who hate Israel on our editorials and our op-eds.
We have to believe it's fixable. Otherwise, what's this fight for? What are we're trying to win hearts and minds here.
I mean, New York in general. The question is if that's fixable. The whole state.
Maybe not. Yeah.
All right. Hasbara. Useful word or time to retire it? Hasbara means to defend Israel.
I don't care about the word.
No.
But the approach, right? So as I mentioned before, my whole thing is about being proactive. So I think explaining yourself and being on the defense, we should retire that whole approach. But there is a bit of that going on in the sense of, if there are untruths, you do kind of have to clap back, but at the same time go on the offense as well.
So we need that Hasbara community.
I don't care about the word
everyone's
itself.
Everyone's getting paid $7,000 a tweet. And
by the way, I've never been paid.
I have never been paid
by the government. I mean, obviously I have a non-profit and I have donors.
It's a myth.
But
everyone's independent and most of us are working from ours.
Let's be honest. I think there are some influencers that have been paid.
If they're working, if they're being hired specifically for this.
There are, more, let's say, higher profile and maybe,
we don't have the money coming in like Qatar does.
But it's not like everyone, the vast majority of us, just say, I usually use the 80-20 rule. So let's just say maybe it's even 95-5%, right? If anyone's getting paid, it's 5%, maybe even less. But the vast majority of us, we're doing it voluntarily.
Yeah. And giving up our own funds, not just...
Yeah, so I have a non-profit, but most of my own funds have gone into it. I do get some donors, but
absolutely.
Mostly self-funded.
Normalizing the Abraham Accords. How do you feel about that?
About the Abraham Accords?
Amazing.
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, on a personal level, I had a friend even before the Abraham Accords, from Dubai, and shout out to Thani if he's watching. And he became, let's say, more sympathetic to Israel. But the Abraham Accords has allowed us, I think, to talk about visiting each other.
Sure.
But of course, there's also the business relationship.
States,
and you saw the reaction now to the war with Iran. You see tangible, positive results.
Celebrities supporting the Palestinian cause. Should we ignore them or push back?
No, of course, push back. With anyone. First of all, the Palestinian cause, I don't like, that's another question could be, should we retire the term
word Palestinian?
Cause? No, Palestinian
cause.
cause. No. Palestinian cause. There's no such thing as a Palestinian cause. It's an anti-Israel, anti-West cause.
Sure.
They're just
and
a tool.
Self-inflicted, their whole situation.
Yeah, but because how do I know it's not the Palestinian cause? Because if it's a real Palestinian cause, why wouldn't they want to free Gaza from Hamas? If they really care about Palestinians, why don't they talk about how the Palestinians are treated in Lebanon? They're barred from certain rights
how Hamas
and
is
jobs.
abusing the women
Exactly.
and the children and child marriage.
And these celebrities are so ignorant. They're either ignorant or anti-Semitic.
Right.
And they're virtue signaling, a lot of them. They think they latch onto this thinking it's going to make them more popular and, look at me.
Well, it did.
They don't know anything.
And what's his name? The other one.
Oh, Mark Ruffalo?
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo. He's a C-list actor, but he...
Oh, no, he was in... in Fair's Fair, he was the Incredible Hulk in Marvel. I'm a big Marvel fan.
Right. And Eternal Sunshine of the Great
Susan
Spotless
Sarandon was in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
She's a great actress, but she's misogynist.
But she's a horrible person. And she did come out with something pretty... They both come out with some pretty anti-Semitic stuff.
She looks uglier when she starts talking about her hatred for Israel. It's like I lose it comes from not a good place.
Yeah.
It comes from a very angry, dark place.
It's true. They start to look much uglier.
Yeah, okay. Most influential anti-Israel accounts these days that people should avoid. Anyone making their voice heard louder than usual?
Wow, that's a really good question.
I mean, for a while we have Candace, we have Tucker, obviously, okay? Megyn Kelly's, throwing the mix. But I'm talking about, some of the smaller accounts that sometimes make a lot of noise. Anything we should look out for?
Look, I'm going to avoid this question a bit. I'll tell you why. There are so many bot accounts and paid accounts now, and they're probably not even the real people. There's so much misinformation. You got to look out for all accounts that are being anti-Israel, and you have to investigate their claims and push back. The numbers game, I mean, a lot of times we put so much emphasis on the numbers, but just because, and by the way, that happens on our side too. Look how many followers I have, look how many views I've got. But that doesn't necessarily mean influence. The ones we really have to be worried about is going back to your previous question. They're the celebrities, the role models.
Right.
Okay, they're the ones you got to be worried about, not the ones that come out of nowhere
and concerts and coming out with their flag.
Exactly,
because the young people don't care. Yeah. They just say, "Oh, it's good for them, good for me."
If so and so, my favorite basketball player or my favorite singer
supports Gaza,
then I don't know anything about it, but I like that person. I want to be like them.
Right.
So that's why we do need to pay attention to the stupid celebrities.
Yeah, definitely. What's the hardest lie to debunk because it sounds so reasonable?
Oh my God. Wow.
What are you getting over and over again? I mean, the fact that people say the IDF is worse than Hamas, just don't even start with that. Okay, so let's put that to rest for a second. But what do you think the messaging from Israel, what is one message that people just have to put to bed?
Okay. No, it's a good question because actually none of them I think are that difficult if you do your research or you know how to debunk it, right? Mm. But I think the whole way since Durban in the early 2000s that the anti-Israel cause have couched everything. It's a deliberate ploy, right? And I said this before, couched everything in human rights language. That's made it a lot harder for us, right?
Sure.
So for instance, apartheid lie, right? Now, the apartheid lie, it can be hard, right? Because a lot of people will just go, oh, look, checkpoints. Israelis don't have checkpoints, right? Jews don't have checkpoints. By the way, Arabs in Israel...
Well, we're not allowed in their villages.
Yeah, true,
their checkpoint is that they'll kill you when you come in.
Exactly. But also, so I think that the best way to debunk is to get people to come to Israel. Because you can put out the pictures that we all put out. Oh, look, apartheid in McDonald's. Because you see that, the woman in the hijab getting a burger at the Israeli, McDonald's store. And I've done plenty of that over the time. But now with AI, I think it's a bit harder. I think we have to get more people to come to Israel because, doctors, I know it sounds a little bit cliched right now, but think about that for a second. I mean, when my wife was sick, she had a doctor that performed an operation on her, Dr. Muhammad someone, okay? And he was fantastic. And I didn't blink an eyelid. We didn't blink an eyelid. We put ourselves in his hands because he's one of us.
Right.
He's it's not even a question. This whole narrative is ridiculous.
Israeli Jews think they're superior to Israeli Arabs. It's just false.
It's absolutely false.
We live in peace with them.
I mean, look,
appreciate
obviously there are exceptions
tension.
and someone will say some stupid thing, right? And then someone on Twitter will say, look, they're all supremacists. Again, that's the demonization based on like some idiot saying something, right? But like let's talk in generalizations. Yeah, we get on well, okay, generally speaking, and they definitely have the opportunities and the rights that Jews have. And I'll give you another example. During that week, the open house, the Shiva, as it were, the sheikh of the Druze village, Al-Dalit, I think it's called, he came and, and it was very emotional, and he came and we were talking to him. He hugged me.
Druze have lost so many of their own.
Yeah, I know. He was saying how all his kids and what they were doing in the army and how he was proud to serve. Sure. He goes to every single one of these shivas to pay, most Jews don't even do that. I'm not criticizing the Jews. I'm just saying how patriotic he is.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of Muslims and other ethnicities,
and they have
Christians,
skin in the game.
They have skin, of course, because they understand we're protecting them as well.
Right.
And all these rockets coming in from Iran and Lebanon, there were Arabs, there was even Palestinians that have been killed, right? Even a Gazan was killed.
Even yesterday, an Arab was killed.
Yeah.
Just yesterday from a rocket from Hezbollah, an Israeli worker, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course the genocide lie, but that, I could go on for hours about that, but like people don't even know how genocide is defined.
All the big words have nothing to do with Israel. They're all their words and they're all just thrown on us because that's
but I will tell you one thing that makes it a bit more difficult. And that's when you have these so-called human rights organizations coming out with their bogus reports. Because when you come up and say, listen, it's not a genocide, it's not apartheid, and we have great proof of that, they'll just say, well, then you're against, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. I mean, these reports have been debunked, but unfortunately...
if you wait long enough, for example, we learned that 50,000 widows in Gaza were given some sort of payment. Well, if 50,000 widows were being paid by Hamas, that's because their husbands were fighters. So if you're saying 70,000 people were killed after October 7th and 50,000 of them were fighters, you're proving it yourself. Eventually, truth comes out.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's so much confirmation bias and people that aren't willing to handle the truth.
And everyone follows up.
No, but so we're looking again at the people in the middle who are intellectually honest. So, getting to your question, the hardest lies to debunk are when you have these faux, human rights organizations lending credence to the lie, right? If it's some anonymous idiot on X or even a celebrity that doesn't know anything.
They're anti-Semites too, as the UN is.
We can say that, Chana, but what I'm saying is it's harder. It makes it harder for us.
I know. And I see it and
it
hurts.
Harder for us. It hurts.
And it hurts.
Yeah.
Because it would be wonderful if all these organizations that we thought stand for women and stand for freedom and stand for democracy, if they would show up after October 7th, and they didn't.
And maybe we have to look more into their funding. And I know like groups like NGO Monitor, they do great research in that regard to find this a lot of times nefarious funders.
There's great organizations. Memory also does great work. Yeah, you gotta filter what you're following.
Yeah.
You could get brainwashed just by following on the wrong accounts.
Yes.
Okay. Carnivore diet. You into that? No?
What do you think? You haven't seen all my posts about doing barbecues all the time. No, I'm an Australian, obviously, and I love meat. I barbecue almost every week in the summer for Shabbat.
Every single Israeli deserves a full cow. I think the government should just give us a cow so we have enough meat.
If there's any vegetarians in the audience, we might be putting them off. By the way, my daughter...
We could bring the vegan rabbi.
My daughter, my daughter's a vegetarian, so I buy her the fake meat stuff, and that apparently is very good.
Okay, good. Worst platform for Israel, X, Instagram, or TikTok?
I think, in my opinion, X is just a you-know-what show. It is just so shameless. And because it's just sort of everything's happening quicker, so it's almost like automatic machine gun fire of lies. Whereas the other ones, I think there's a lot of lies going on there, but it's sort of maybe more slow burn, if I can put it that way. So I think X is probably the worst as far as I can see. Okay.
I've been banned from X.
Oh, there you go. I didn't even know that. So it's even worse.
I was banned from X. One of my tweets ended up on Al Jazeera. Before October 7th, I tweeted that I said not to be facetious, but if any other country was neighbors with Gaza, they would have destroyed them a long time ago.
Oh, I remember that.
And then I see this Al Jazeera host reading my tweet in English
and out of context.
Out of context. Yeah. Well, it wasn't even out of context. It was just that if
implying.
If Putin ran the show, he wouldn't put up with the nonsense.
No, but Gaza. Implying that you would want them to be blown to kingdom come. I'm sure that's what they.
And anyone who looks at my can look at my feed. I'm not a huge fan, but it's definitely not as extreme as that.
Yeah, of course not.
Okay. Last question. One thing, my friend, that you wish you knew in 2003 that you've learned since now.
Does it have to be Hasbara related? Or?
No, not necessarily. As a person, it's been 20 years since you moved here. What has been what is something that has maybe changed you the most, or has become just completely your truth after all these years? If there was any hesitation, if there were any doubts.
No, I
You've
think
been through a lot.
what I've said already previously is that I think raising kids in Israel is the best thing a Jew can do.
Love that. Raise your kids in Israel, make aliyah.
Because for all the difficulties, and we're talking about loss and everything like this, as I said, their priorities, their values, it's just when I compare to, I don't want to put down Jewish kids in the diaspora, but it's different. You can be great kids in the diaspora, and there are.
And this is coming
but these
from
kids
someone.
are the bravery, and I look up to my kids. I look up to them. I look up to the way they are, their bravery, their values, and it's not just about my kids. It's about the vast majority of kids in this country. So I would say that that's something that's really kept with me.
Wow, beautiful. David, thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you. It's not glamorous what you do. It's not a career that comes with job security or a pension or anything along those lines.
Definitely not.
But for 20 years, through personal loss, through threats, you've shown up through the exhaustion, and I want to thank you. And I keep thinking about Gilad, 21 years old, a life that won't be lived, a life that was sacrificed for our country, and something that the world doesn't talk about, doesn't mourn like we do. And these are the people who provide the safety, like we said, all throughout this episode for the West, and we need to be grateful. Yeah. And we need to appreciate them and recognize their lives and their sacrifice. So do us a favor, give us a thumbs up on this episode. Head over to David's blog, subscribe, follow him on X, and continue the support. Thank you for your stubbornness. Thank you for refusing to make it prettier than it is. And
you're saying I'm ugly?
No. I'm just saying your voice is clear and straight and no fluff. And you do what has to be done through the hardest times. And that's really what makes us so beautifully Israeli.
Thank you for
being here.
Having me, and particularly for allowing to give some tribute to Gilad and, in fact, all the soldiers who have been killed as the brave heroes that they are. Thank you.
It gives us a lot of strength. Thank you. This is the Weekly Squeeze. I'm Hanala on Moral Edge.